Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Avatar news update video. This one is going to be more comic news, more North and South comic news. What the news is this time is that we have the cover for part 2 and 3 of North and South, plus release dates for part 1, 2 and 3. Turns out the Penguin Random House release date for part 1 was wrong, and Comic Book Resources, who have the exclusive for part 2 and 3, have the proper release date now. So we have the basically full release schedule, everything except, when the preview pages start to come out. We know exactly when this series is coming out, the dates. Now, before I get into the news, I assume that what happened here is that Penguin Random House made a mistake putting up North and South so quickly, in that I assume Comic Book Resources were meant to get the entire exclusive of the reveal of North and South. They were meant to reveal all 3 covers, the description for part 1, and the release dates for all 3 of them. That was their exclusive, that this is the next comic series, this is what it's called. But because of what happened last week, they can only now say that their exclusive is the part 2 and 3 cover and release dates. So, I think it's stuff like this has happened before in the past, but it's just interesting that it's actually happened again, that this Penguin Random House has revealed so much Avatar book merchandise in the past couple of weeks, and the big sites like Comic Book Resources, their exclusives are seemingly getting changed. But again, I'm just speculating that that's actually what's happened here. So let's get into actually talking about the new information. But I'll start with going back over part 1. So we've already had the cover for this, we already had the description. I won't go into the description. Here's the cover for part 1. Now, the release date that we initially had last week was, it said September 27th, 2016. That day is a Tuesday, which means that based on every other comic that's come out before, comics are usually released in comic book stores, always released in comic book stores on a Wednesday. So you go back 13 days, so the comic book store release date was September 14th, 2016. But according to Comic Book Resources, part 1 is actually going to be released September 28th, which is a Wednesday, which means that the mass market or bookstore or other bookstore release date is going to be October 11th for this comic. So that's interesting in and of itself. It's actually coming out 2 weeks later than we expected, but still in September. Now, the new information here is the cover for part 2 and the cover for part 3, in addition to their release dates. So first up is the North and South part 2 cover, which you can see here. Looks really nice. The release date for part 2 is January 25th, 2017. Comic book store release, that's a release date, that's a Wednesday. So 13 days on is February 7th, and that's going to be the mass market release date for North and South part 2. Now let's actually discuss this image. I think of the 3 covers, the part 2 cover is the best. You have the most characters on the cover, you have this kind of spire structure in the background that I think gives the most hint of what the story is going to be about. And I think most interestingly of all, it's the only one to include a character not part of Team Avatar. So you have Sokka and Katara's father, Hakoda, on the cover here, and also Toph is here now as well. So she wasn't on the cover for part 1, that's a reveal in and of itself. But I'll talk about her a little bit later. I think this is the best cover because, one, nice selection of comics. I like that Katara's the focus. The 3 Water Tribe characters are also kind of front and center, and Aang's just kind of there, kind of towards the back with Toph. That makes sense to me. That's a nice move for part 2. But absolutely, this metal spire, they're clearly still on the Water Tribe, Southern Water Tribe, I assume. To me, based on other stuff like that you've seen before, I'm assuming that's some sort of a oil drilling spire or something like that, because when you see that in that sort of a structure in video games or a TV show or something like that, that's usually how I think they draw an oil drilling type platform, something like that. It's some sort of thing to, I think, mine the resources of the Southern Water Tribe or something like that. I may be completely wrong there, but that's just my speculation right now. So I'm assuming that what the conflict is going to be is that the Northerners want to become really modern, and so they're heavily industrializing the South, which is a huge change for the people of the South, because they used to just be one tiny village, and now all of a sudden they're being kind of very quickly forced to kind of become very modern and stuff like that. So the conflict could be over that. We've seen hints at the whole modern versus traditional stuff in the Rift. It makes sense that it's affecting the Southern Water Tribe as well. Hakoda being on the cover seems to suggest some sort of a conflict where he's involved. Again, we don't have descriptions for part 2 and 3 just yet, so I assume this new character Melina is also going to be involved there. But it's definitely interesting. And then, Toph, this is the first cover we see her on, so does she come at a later point, or is she actually in part 1, or what? That's going to be interesting. But yeah, the kind of spire oil drilling platform, whatever you want to call it, is definitely the most interesting thing on the part 2 cover. So we'll switch over to North and South part 3, and here's the cover for that. The release date for this is going to be April 26th, 2017. That's a Wednesday. That's the comic book store release date. The mass market release date for part 3 is going to be May 9th, 2017. So they're the release dates. And then here, this cover is interesting. You have Aang at the front again. Okay, whatever conflict, he's gonna have some help in resolving. Katara's also there at the front. Sokka and Toph at the back. Okay, no Hakoda this time. They're out in the desert, in like a tundra kind of area. So they seem to be away from the actual main village, but in the background, in between the two ice spires, just under the word last, you can see, I think it's meant to be there. To me, what it looks like is some form of a bridge. Now, I don't really know what that's for. Maybe it's a bridge to the oil kind of spire thing, and there's maybe a platform or something like that. Maybe that's what's happening here. But anyway, I think it's very clear that in this otherwise natural environment with ice spires and snow and stuff like that, there's just a bridge randomly in the background. They don't really draw attention to it in the background, it's just there, but it's the one kind of out of place detail in the entire thing. The Southern Water Tribe doesn't just randomly have a bridge right out in the middle of the kind of winter tundra type thing. So again, I think that hints at the modernization and what's happening here. I think right now, I think it's a fair enough kind of extension to kind of link the spire from the part 2 cover to the bridge in the part 3 cover. Other than that, like, there's nothing really of note about the other the covers in terms of positions that the characters are in. They're fairly standard. Now, the final thing really to talk about is, I suppose, Toph's inclusion here. Toph is going to be interesting here because obviously she joined Team Avatar in book 2, which was after all the Water Tribe stuff was done. They left the south at the very beginning, they went to the north at the very end, and then book 2 happened. Toph has never visited either of the Water Tribes. So, for some reason, I assume in that she wants to see where her team started. She'll probably want to go with them, or depending on some plot reasons, if she only returns up at the end of part 2 or something like that, maybe with Aang. That would make sense, I suppose. She and Aang return to the Water Tribe or something like that. It'll be interesting to see what her involvement is. Is she just there to help Katara with the Water Tribe, or what? Because we know Toph has her own stuff going on, with her metal bending school. She's just kind of healed things with her father, so fixing that would be important. Maybe trying to fix things with her mother as well, and like her and Satoru, maybe something's going on there and stuff like that. So Toph seems to have like a lot going on herself, so the fact that she's coming with Team Avatar here is actually quite interesting. The other thing is that it's going to be interesting to see how her abilities work in the Water Tribe, in that, okay, she sees by using her seismic sense, earthbending basically, to sense the earth, but in the Water Tribe, where we don't have the full geological kind of situation of the Water Tribes, but like, I assume the earth is at the very least separated from the obvious surface by a certain amount of snow, a certain amount of ice. So when she earthbends, is it going to come up from like really low below the ground, or what? And is she going to be able to see effectively just walking around normally in the tribe? it could link into the fact that, okay, if the place is now modernized and there's more metal around, it would make sense that she's more effective. But especially in like the part 3 cover, you clearly see they're just in the middle of the kind of tundra. There's just snow and ice on the ground. How effective is she going to be? So that's going to be a fun thing throughout the series to see, just Toph adapting to the cold for one, and then just how her abilities work in a more icy kind of surface. So that's about really all there is to cover with the 2 covers here, pardon the pun. But yeah, that's just, Hakoda, his design looks a little older than we've last saw it. Nothing like crazy, because obviously he's, for him, it's going from being like around, like late 30s, early 40s to being just 2 years on from there. So it's not going to be a massive change for him. Our younger characters are obviously going to be the ones where they actually do look older with a span of like 2 years. So, and even there for Hakoda, it's basically only like a year and a bit for him. So yeah, that's really all there is to say. I'm still really excited for this series once Smoke and Shadow comes to an end. I would like to know a little bit more about what the story is actually going to be about. And I assume we'll get that, not relatively quickly once we start getting information about like part 2. I think that will reveal a little bit more than we know right now. But right now, at least for the next couple of months, that's going to be, I think, the last we hear about North and South for a good while. I think, the book's not out until September, which, at the very earliest, I can see preview pages in like May, and that's really early, I think. Realistically, we're not probably going to see preview pages for part 1 until probably like June or July. Maybe at one of the conventions they'll release them early or something like that, because it seems like they potentially have a good amount of this series done if they have all the covers done already. But again, the covers are quite general. They could have just done, the covers might be the first piece of art they've done for the series. We just don't know right now. But again, there's still a few things we're waiting on news for. We're still waiting on preview pages for the Korra free comic. We're still waiting on an announcement for the full Korra comic as well. I assume they will come fairly shortly. But other than that, that's been the video. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on the 2 new covers, some of the speculation, the 2 notable kind of the bridge on the part 3 cover and the spire on the part 2 cover. What are your thoughts on them? And just in general, your thoughts on the whole North and South reveal as well. But other than that, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.